This is part 2 of the mini-series on the ghosts in the Haunted Mansion stretching room. If you haven't already, be sure to check out part 1. This week, we'll be discussing arguably the most iconic of the 4, the Tightrope Girl. You know how I said that the stretching room is one of the first things people think of when they think of the Haunted Mansion? Well, the Tightrope Girl is probably the first thing that comes to mind when they think of the stretching room. With such a striking image, it's no wonder that she's become such a well-known character in the attraction. What's her story? Lean back in your doom buggy as we learn about it together. Like the other stretching portraits, Marc Davis seemed to have arrived at a concept he liked pretty quickly. A few preliminary sketches exist of the Tightrope Girl, but he still had the general idea in his head pretty early on. Pretty girl standing on something. The alligator might be an allusion to the ride's setting. Louisiana's got roughly 2 million of them. Shoving one in there is just playing to audience expectations. When you consider some of the early renderings of the facade put the mansion in a bayou, it makes all the more sense. As we discussed in the previous episode, each of the stretching portraits went through a design evolution based on whoever was painting them. It's interesting to compare Davis's original drawing of her, a chipper girl with kind of a crazed look in her eyes, to some of her later renderings, where she seems dazed and not all there. The stretching portraits were all hand-painted until 2005, when they switched to printing them. Not only was it less labor-intensive, but they lasted longer. The stretching portraits are apparently a pain in the ass to replace. Anything that keeps them in the mansion longer is a blessing. Some of the old portraits go up for auction every now and again. In 2010, one of the Tightrope Girls sold for $47,000. Unlike Alexander Nitrikov, the Tightrope Girl didn't have a known name or backstory, at least originally. So once again, we're dealing with another ghost who's gone through a few different identities. The 7th and final issue of the SLG comics told her backstory in The Tale on a Tightrope. The ghost host is talking to another ghost, introducing him to some of their guests in their corruptible mortal state. Daisy de la Cruz was a member of a traveling carnival that took up permanent residence in a Louisiana bayou. Men came from all over, entranced by her beauty and wanting to vie for her hand. One poor man, named Papa de Janeiro, is more persistent, begging for her to marry him. She declines, but says he can join her family instead. And as it turns out, she's a witch, turning unsuspecting men into alligators. All of the men she turned stayed in the bayou, waiting for the moment that rope gives way so they can have their revenge. A rather dark take on her story, even by Haunted Mansion standards, and one that didn't really stick. The most common name you'll see for her nowadays is Sally Slater. The name first showed up at the interactive queue at the Walt Disney World Mansion. The Poet's Crypt, which we talked about in a previous episode, included the following poem. In the swamp, poor Sally Slater was eaten by an alligator. The interactive queue was really the beginning of the parks, and the mansion in particular, developing a more cohesive backstory. So Sally ended up being the name that stuck. According to her Host-A-Ghost jar, she's described as a dancer at heart with good balance. Her death at the hands of the alligators was a freak accident as a strong breeze blew by. Also, Sally is just a nickname. Her real name is Sarah. She was also one of the main characters in the Ghost Post interactive game. Long story short, there's something weird going on at the mansion that's keeping ghosts from entering or leaving. A ragtag group of them come together to form the Committee of Wandering Ghosts in order to recruit some mortals to help them out. She seems to be the most optimistic about the mortals and the nicest to them. When speaking to Madame Leota about it, she's more open-minded than the medium. The characterization carried over into the Frights of Fancy comic. She's one of the first ghosts to greet Cindy and make her feel welcome. When Constance starts antagonizing her, she insists that she shouldn't listen to her, and she sticks up for her when she finds out the others weren't treating her well. As for that alligator, she seems to treat it like a pet. I guess when you're dead, there's no hard feelings over getting mauled and death-rolled. Tokyo Disneyland's Story Beyond event furthered this, with the ghost referring to her as lively and sociable, as well as having a bright and caring nature. After some of the previous works portrayed her as some kind of temptress or evil woman, it's nice to see that she's taken on a more kind and caring nature. She's appeared sporadically as a live character over the years. mainly at private and special ticketed events. The Sally Slater moniker has stuck, though she's been called Daisy a few times. Sometimes she has a French accent, but it depends on the actress. She even made an appearance at the D23 Expo in 2019 at a panel commemorating the ride's 50th anniversary. She participated in a live reading of Exitensio's original script, with her reading the actions and directions. The costume they used for her is really impressive. It looks pulled straight from the attraction. A shame you don't see it more often. What else? People have said that this ghost from the 2003 film was modeled after her. I think that's a stretch. The outfits and hair look nothing alike. All that's there is the umbrella. The Mummified version of the portrait had Janice in her place. The alligator is the Muppet crocodile, in case you were wondering. Like Alex, she's a playable character in Disney Crossy Roads and an NPC in Disney Emoji Blitz. A DVD game for Lion King 1.5 of all things has 2 separate portraits based on her. One has Timon standing on a vine over the hyenas, and the other has Pumbaa in a tutu standing on top of a stork and a rhino. She even got her own clothing and Loungefly line. I'd be remiss not to mention another mansion character influenced by her. In the original version of Phantom Manor, the stretching portraits were all of the bride, Melanie. Her hair and outfits were all inspired by Sally, one of many direct callbacks to the mansion. She's even holding an umbrella in one of them.
In a third, the one that pays homage to Mark, she is in a canoe with a parasol drifting down a lazy little inlet.
Once the 2019 refurbishment happened, these homages went away. In all the new portraits, Melanie's got her hair down instead. It's a minor detail, but still worth bringing up. We even recently got a brand new stretching portrait based on her. In an episode of the Disney Channel series Random Rings, Scratch from the Ghost of Molly McGee calls up the Ghost Relations Department looking for a way out of his predicament with Molly, thinking maybe the Haunted Mansion would let him in. Sally herself doesn't appear in the short, though Scratch did try asking her for a referral. But that's not why I'm bringing it up. On a wall in the office, there's one of those cheesy hanging there cat posters that you see in like every corporate office. But eagle-eye viewers will notice that it's actually stretching, and the cat is hanging over a hippo's mouth. The poster was designed by artist Sam Keston. I wonder what Mark Davis, Rolly Crump, and Yale Gracie would say if you went back in time and told them that artists would still be finding new ways to use their stretching portrait concept over 50 years later. It just proves how timeless they are. But with that, our analysis of Sally comes to an end. Another haunt to add to the shelf. The miniseries will, of course, continue. We still have 2 more portraits to discuss, along with all the other haunts we haven't gotten to yet. So sit back in your doom buggy and we will proceed in the next episode. Thanks for watching.